You're very right about all of those things right there, Rico. Yes, we were judging the best of competition, and we found out who won the best of. So if you want, you can check out. We did some streams. We did some streams of the judging. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you check it out. There's about three or so different streams throughout the different periods over the weekend, and so check them out. Let us know what you think. And oh man, Rico, here we go, because floundering weed stocks test Wall Street's faith in 2024 rebound, you guys. You know what I say? I say dump them all. That's right. The case for investing in cannabis companies is, in theory, the strongest it's ever been. Weed shops are popping up on street corners across the U.S. at a frantic pace, while the 2024 presidential election offers an impetus for drug reform. And yet the stocks underlying in the industry are floundering, with even the bills growing tired of waiting. Index tracking the shares of 100 marijuana-related companies has tumbled more than 15% so far this year, after touching an all-time low in October. In a quote, "The fundamentals don't matter much at all," unfortunately, said Dan Ahern's managing director of Advisor Shares Investments, LLC. They will again, but right now these companies and their stock prices are extremely tied to federal reform. Even though 24 states, 2 territories in Washington, D.C. have legalized cannabis for adult use purposes, the plant remains a Schedule I substance on a federal basis. And the same tier as heroin and LSD, federal decriminalization has been good among Democrats, though there's been relatively little progress under President Joe Biden's administration. On Wall Street, the lingering red tape is impossible to overlook because of marijuana's status. Cannabis companies are taxed so heavily that they struggle to make enough cash, and their shares and the exchange-traded funds that track them are also largely kept off of major marketplaces like the New York Stock Exchange, instead of trading over the counter or on smaller Canadian exchanges. That's all but wiped out the optimism among the pickers who'd expected industry legitimization progress to unleash an epic windfall. The highs and lows and clear in prices of pot stocks over the years. Tilray Brands Incorporated U.S. shares trade at just about $2 each, and a tiny fraction of what they were worth in 2018 when the stock hit a high of about $214. Curaleaf Holdings was wiped out roughly $10 billion of shareholder value since a 2021 peak, and Canopy Growth this week resorted to plans for a 1-for-10 reverse stock split in a desperate bid to ensure the stock trades at $1 or more per share. To Will Hershey, chief executive and co-founder of Roundhill Financial Incorporated, it's a disappointment. When he launched an exchange-traded trade fund tracking U.S. cannabis companies, ticker WEED, last year, the outlook was that 2023 would be a better year for beaten-down pot stocks. And in a quote, "The whole idea was that we were going to have more progress than we'd seen on the regulatory front," he said. "As long as these companies have to list on smaller Canadian exchanges and have to operate with really burdensome tax regimes, the story is less interesting." His WEED fund hit an all-time low in August as it slumped to 62% since it started trading in April 20th of 2022. There is, of course, still a chance that Democrats renew the push to reschedule and decriminalize cannabis, especially as they seek to win over voters ahead of Biden's re-election campaign in 2024. Fat chance of that, you guys. The next catalyst on investors' radar is potential reclassification of marijuana. Pot stocks jumped for one of their best weekly performances this year in September after U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration said it would review its classification of cannabis, an action taken after nudging by Biden's team. And rescheduling is a major fundamental catalyst that could result in better equity performance, said Needham Co. and analyst Matthew McGinney. Of course, any action by the DEA would likely face legal challenges, and even in a scenario that sees reclassification and relief from taxes, the boost would be desperate, said Chris Enton, an analyst on Morningstar who covers cannabis companies. Multi-state operators have the most to gain if they face softer tax rules, from Cresco Labs and True Leaf Cannabis Corporation to Green Thumb Industries. Larger Canadian companies such as Tilray, Canopy Growth, and Kronos Group would see less impact from rescheduling because they currently only sell THC products in the U.S., Inton said. And plus, it would only be one step in the right direction. Most on Wall Street agree that beyond rescheduling, it would take both legislation, likely the Safer Banking Act, which would make banking and financial services more accessible to the industry, and legalization and federal level for the industry to flourish. The Safer Banking Act, however, will expire if it's not voted on by the end of the legislative session in January, meaning it would have to be reintroduced yet again after swift action from Congress seems unlikely, as House Speaker Mike Johnson has voted against cannabis reform in the past. I'm not buying that. Just because he voted against cannabis reform in the past don't mean he would call for a vote. I'm not buying that one. And Advisors Ahern's is still betting that federal reform is somewhere on the horizon, pointing to the expansion of states that have legalized cannabis for adult use. Focused ETF, nicknamed MSOs, is down roughly 73% from its launch in 2020. And in a quote, "We think it's closer than ever," he said, "but we also expected it about 2.5 or 3 years ago." Well, I'll tell you what, keep on waiting, because ain't shit changing. And this is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do you think about these stocks, Rico, you financial analyst?
Is that an insult?
Who said it was?
Goddamn financial analyst.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. There's been more versions of safe banking that's come out, man, in the last 10 years, and Lil Wayne No Ceiling is a series. And all these, oh no, man. Safe banking, I still believe safe banking is not going to ever pass.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these cannabis stocks, like I said last week, they are reaching that 5-year runway that a lot of them were granted in the beginning by a ton of their investors.
Mm-hmm.
Like the returns aren't there. Safe banking hasn't been passed. Cannabis hasn't been legalized on a federal level. And this is the problem when you base your investments on something that you're anticipating to pass. But easy way to get around that is just track what the members of Congress are actually investing in.
Hey, bro, I'm not mad at that one. That is so true. Yeah. See which member of Congress buys a cannabis stock, and then you'll know something's going to happen.
If you see Curaleaf popping up in Nancy Pelosi's portfolio, it's a buy.
Or even Paul, her husband Paul. Either one. You know, was a Twitter account that followed Paul Pelosi's investments, and it got bumped off the platform.
Yeah, I think Elon should bring that page back.
I think Elon should just go away.
I think that we need to make a critical difference here, right? Because the difference that I think needs to be made is the notion that publicly traded cannabis companies represent the health of the cannabis industry. And the truth is, there's a lot of companies that are not public that you're not going to know the financial performance because they're not out there pandering for using other people's money through the sale of stock in order to fund their vision and expansion. And so it's very expensive to be a publicly traded company. There's a lot more reporting requirements. And typically the companies that want to go public or be public want to do that so that they can scale with OPM, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just think that if we look at the cannabis industry, it wouldn't really be fair to the industry to say, well, the health of these publicly traded companies represents the health of the industry or the health of the opportunity. The other thing also is that in the beginning, the publicly traded companies were the ones that were Canadianly traded, right? Canadian Stock Exchange. And so that also skewed, if we were going to say stocks are the, publicly traded companies are the index by which we're going to measure the health of the industry, that would skew that data point to be more heavily focused on companies that are founded in Canada, operate in Canada, at least trading on the CSE. And I just don't think it represents the industry more broadly.
Interesting.
I agree. It really represents people who, primarily from outside of the cannabis industry and culture, really have no clue how to navigate because they don't actually use or care for the plant. And what we see constantly, like Cresco is a great example. You can watch Cresco go from state to state, acquiring winning assets, and then just crashing them into the ground and moving on. JBZ, Continuum. I could just go on and list. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but
I'll go for it.
Number one,
Just
if you're going to be in any industry, you actually have to care and be a part of said industry. Like, I'm not in drag racing because I have no fucking clue if my car breaks down, I don't know how to fix it.
That's not
how to get a better time.
I'm
also not.
In a pair of
imagine putting Saint Germain in charge of the next biggest software app.
But Saint G, you do often on the weekends wear dresses and running shoes. So I would argue that you are into drag racing.
What's weird is even though I support every type of alternative lifestyle, I have never worn a dress or cross-dressed.
Good for you, Matthew.
Well,
it's about the only thing that isn't my thing, I'd say, with the exception of my Utilikilt that I used to run.
Get this man a Hyatt branded bikini now.
I mean,
for you guys, I'll wear a dress. How about that?
Amazing. I mean, he does wear onesies, so that's close.
I mean, look, separate from how on a Monday Saint Germain chooses to banana hammock, there is also the notion that the Safe Banking Act is this next critical step for progress in the industry.
It is.
And the truth is, nothing could be further from the truth. There's a lot that can be done at the executive level that doesn't require a legislative act.
You'd have to have an executive there.
Yes, you're right. I was going to do a triple snap, and you got me mid triple snap. Changing the way in which we have suspicious activity reporting requirements, which increases the cost of cannabis banking for compliance purposes, those things could be tuned down. There's a lot of things that could be done to make the financial systems more accommodating of the cannabis industry that don't require the passage of SAFE. And so the people who cheerlead for SAFE, it's almost a metric for who's a fucking idiot, because they don't understand government and they don't understand what can be done in government without the passage of SAFE. And we've gone from SAFE to safest to safer. This whole notion needs its own safe word because I don't see it passing. It's been years that SAFE has been teed up and everybody gets all, who the fuck cares? There's ways to make cannabis banking cheaper without that act ever passing that doesn't require that we solve the logjam that is partisan Congress. And yet everybody focuses on it in this as if it's going to be the shot in the arm. And this industry doesn't need that shot in the arm specifically in order to improve and to have a more hospitable business climate.
So are you saying...
You know what, Yarrow? Like, I have to admit, I'm a huge fan of safe banking because it's already won me $300. And I'm saying it right now, Jason, I'm going to bet you another $100 that safe banking ain't going to pass in this session of Congress.
I agree with you on that. I don't think it has a chance of passing this session of Congress. There's not a chance.
Who wants that $100 bet? Gretchen Alien.
If I see another LinkedIn post about safe banking, I'm just going to eat my own used gym sock. It's like enough is enough is enough. There tends to be this thing in this space where we overly focus on one or two things and everybody just focuses on it. And safe banking is one of them. The other one is federal decriminalization, or this notion that everybody has said, oh, in 3 years it's going to be federally legal. They've been saying that for 9 years, okay? Check your watch, do the math. It doesn't make any sense anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I think safe has gotten it more than its fair share of 15 minutes of fame.
Yep.
And I'm just going to say
safe banking.
I'm going to say pass safe banking already. But